everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Xan, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about a world of DeFi that is starting to take shape on top of Bitcoin and why DeFi actually needs Bitcoin to succeed long term. So just some quick background to start. As I mentioned, my name is Xan. I was one of the first 10 core team members on a US-based project called Stacks, formerly known as Blockstack. In early 2020, I moved out to Asia, founded my own company here, Daemon Technologies. Our main focus is on Stacks mining, and we also just generally spread the adoption of Stacks technology here in Asia. So let's jump right into it. To start, I think we're all familiar with how DeFi has just absolutely exploded over the past year or so. Needless to say, software, I think, is finally really eating finance whole. But now at this juncture, it's kind of more important than ever to make sure that DeFi is being built to last and in such a way that it can reliably and securely go on to support potentially the whole world participating. That is kind of the ultimate goal. And this is an important point because, and I think it's important to highlight this, DeFi really depends on this paradigm of decentralized trust in order to exist. That is trust in protocols and software. Without this kind of base layer of decentralized trust, DeFi does not and cannot exist. So it's kind of interesting, although I think for most here, probably unsurprising, that Bitcoin has largely been left out of this DeFi explosion. But why is that? Well, I think as many of us know, very limited composability. You can just create the kind of simplest of DeFi type things like time-locked funds, escrow type stuff, and very slow moving and conservative governance. Basically, this is the same dynamic that ended up, I think, creating Ethereum and a whole host of other stuff. If I can't change the system that I'm working in, then I need to leave and go create my own system. And so DeFi has largely happened on top of other networks like Ethereum. Folks have still tried to solve for this lack of Bitcoin, though, by creating things like wrapped Bitcoin, WBTC. WBTC, unfortunately, doesn't actually create Bitcoin-based DeFi at all. It makes the mistake of just bringing over the asset value, but it's actually the network. It's Bitcoin's network that's the part that's actually valuable, and much more so for DeFi. And so we need to find a way to make DeFi work with Bitcoin. And that's because Bitcoin is really the best base layer to enable global DeFi if we want potential global adoption of DeFi to be a potential future. And why? Because Bitcoin is a trust machine. This really is what Bitcoin is to me, much more, store of value, digital gold. These are things that the trust machine that Bitcoin is can be kind of purposed for in terms of a specific use case. But Bitcoin itself is a trust machine. And without strong decentralized trust, DeFi cannot exist. Let's go back and kind of remember a blockchain is just a specific structure for a database. And it's an extremely inefficient structure. A blockchain basically trades off write efficiency for the ability to establish and securely maintain Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus. Another way of saying this is decentralized trust. Any attempt at kind of minimizing that trade-off with the inefficiency is going to degrade your Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus, which is, as we've gone over, kind of unacceptable for DeFi, or at least for supporting DeFi. This is kind of what Bitcoin does better than anything else that has ever existed, being a layer that can establish and maintain this consensus. But it's still too limited, as we've mentioned, to really enable a DeFi world as we fully imagine it. So how can we create highly composable Bitcoin-based DeFi without changing Bitcoin, most importantly? The answer is Stacks. So what is Stacks? Well, Stacks refers to the Stacks blockchain, Stacks network, and native Stacks token. It is a blockchain-based network that fully enables DeFi on top of Bitcoin. You can see the basic stack here. The fundamental base layer of the Stacks network is the Bitcoin network. It's used for settlement and security, and BTC as the reserve asset. The Stacks blockchain is its own layer 1 chain, but it is unique in that it's a layer 1 chain that connects to the Bitcoin chain. Proof of transfer above that is the consensus mechanism used to connect the two chains together. And then Clarity is a language and virtual machine for smart contracts that can enable kind of rich DeFi composability. So let's unpack this a bit more. Here you can see how proof of transfer works as a consensus mechanism. Very simple diagram, but it does a good job of showing Stacks miners spend Bitcoin itself, actual Bitcoin, in order to compete to mint new Stacks blocks. Stacks token holders lock up their tokens, they stake them, we call it stacking, and they earn the Bitcoin that miners are spending. As an aside, I personally, this is pretty cool because I really like getting just like a stream of Bitcoin in a censorship resistant manner just from holding Stacks tokens. But more importantly, this means that transactions, smart contracts, and ultimately apps on Stacks inherit Bitcoin's security and settlement. Clarity, as I mentioned, is a language and virtual machine that's really been made for a world with global DeFi adoption. What I mean by that is, there's many more reasons why we need a new smart contracting language above and beyond the need to add composability to Bitcoin. And the idea of global DeFi adoption, means potentially billions, if not trillions worth of value can be controlled by a very small number or potentially a single smart contract. And so Clarity is a language, built with that future in mind and kind of everything that means. So now that you kind of understand the Stacks approach a little more, what are kind of the benefits of it? Well, first and foremost, no modifications to Bitcoin. It only has one job, which is to establish and maintain that decentralized trust. The layers above it can focus on all the other stuff. That's all that Bitcoin does. The Stacks network can scale independently of Bitcoin. And this is important because DeFi is really just the start here. I think anyone can kind of tell there's nothing about this that is exclusive to financial products and use cases. Stacks really enables, full Web3 and anything you can think of on top of Bitcoin. Lastly, this same approach can actually be used to create additional new networks on top of Stacks as needed. These networks will also settle down to Bitcoin ultimately, and they can reward their token communities in Bitcoin. And that's why there's no need to wait. This kind of financial system that I'm telling you about is already starting to be reimagined on top of Bitcoin. Here's some current examples. The most kind of basic is the DeFi use case baked into proof of transfer, the consensus mechanism, which is stacking. You can see some of the data from the latest cycle right here. Below are also kind of a few newer released projects. The great thing about all of this is it enables DeFi that can really be majority non-custodial. It kind of takes the pressure off the need for there to be custodians for this to be kind of adoptable by kind of more of the mass population. And this is essential for kind of Bitcoin's future security. And that holds true, the non-custodial, even for things like programmable BTC, which some folks are working on. This is really just wrapped Bitcoin on Stacks, The reason this is different, though, if you guys remember my critique of WBTC from a few slides ago, this is different because this doesn't just bring the asset value of Bitcoin into a new network. This brings Bitcoin's network as well. This is programmable BTC, where Bitcoin is still fundamentally used as the trust machine within this asset. And that is true, on a kind of P2P level. So now that you kind of understand why getting DeFi on top of Bitcoin is so important and how to do it using stacks, come join me and some of the rest of the ecosystem you can see here, kind of building towards that future. And with that, I'd just like to give a heartfelt thank you for the time and sitting with me here today. Would love to hear from all of you, especially folks who disagree with me. I'm sure there's a bunch of people that have criticisms of some of the points I raised. Would love to hear from those folks, especially. There's my Twitter and my email, obviously respectfully, but yeah, looking forward to kind of chatting, and thanks everyone.